Hello and welcome to Saturday Morning Cartoons, the weekly podcast that revisits, reviews, and ridicules some of the world's weirdest animated series. Coming to you from the island of broken New Year's resolutions, I'll be your disappointed mentor, Dave Trumbore. Joining me as always, my non-football headed co-host, Sean Paul Ellis. How's it going, Sean?
Hey, David. How are you, buddy?
You sound a little down. You doing okay over there?
No, I'm good.
Do you want to have a football head?
No, we watched a sad episode this week, and so I'm feeling a little bit down.
Yeah, I guess it's sad. Yeah, it's definitely sad. Anytime you're an orphan as a cartoon, it's probably a sad day. But at least we get some explanation of why this kid has been an orphan for 5 seasons of one of the most popular Nicktoons ever. So that's good, right?
Yeah, true. I mean, that's the silver lining in all of this. So good?
Good
Up?
question mark? Hey, for me, it was great because I really like going back to revisit this one. I think last year when we covered our New Year's Nicktoons run, I think at the end of it, we actually did a ranking of all 5 that we happened to cover. So I'd like to do that again at the end of this month, but as I'm saying that, I am going to make a strong case that this particular cartoon is my favorite of all the Nicktoons.
Okay.
Is that right
in
line with your thinking, or are we off on that?
No. I mean, we haven't really had a chance to dive into the rest of the 3 more Nicktoons that we 3 more Nicktoons that we have this month.
True.
So, I'm interested to kind of see what we watch in these other respective series and if they're going to strike a note or some type of a chord with me. But I mean, right now, I would say that you are correct. I watched a ton of Hey Arnold growing up, and so this one holds a very beautiful place in my heart, and so I was glad to recap it as I know that you were.
Yeah, I was actually happy that it stood up, and we watched an episode for tonight's discussion, but I kind of went back and watched a few more because it was so easy to get right back into it, and once I watched one, each of these episodes has 2 segments in it, and they go by fairly quickly. So once I watched one, then I watched another one, and then I watched another one. Before I knew it, I had watched like 5 or 6 of these, so we'll talk about that briefly, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I'd like to turn it back over to Sean, who's going to give you a little bit of the background on Hey Arnold.
Let's get into it. So, Hey Arnold is an American animated television series created by Craig Bartlett for Nickelodeon. Bartlett's idea for the show is based on a minor character named Arnold, whom created while working on Pee-wee's Playhouse, which was a great show. He created the pilot episode in his living room in 1994, and official production began in 1995. The animators worked to transform Arnold from clay animation to cell animation, leading to the series premiere on October 7th, 1996. The show finished production in 2001 and aired its final episode on June 8th, 2004. Hey Arnold had 5 seasons of 100 episodes, which, if we're paying attention, I know that Dave mentioned the segments. There were 185 segments. And it also had a 2002 feature-length movie.
Yeah, and we were talking about this one offline, that the episode we're going to talk about today actually comes from the 5th season, but it's not technically the finale. It certainly plays like one, and we're kind of theorizing that it probably was meant to be at least a season, if not series finale. We don't really have any information on that, but what we do have information on is the fact that Hey Arnold is making a comeback. There's actually...
Woo!
Yeah, Nickelodeon they actually created a brand new position that's actually they have a fancy name for it, but it's basically just for someone to go back and mine old episodes and figure out what they can reboot. So it's literally, the title
I thought you were going to say it was like a executive level, like a, well, I guess in this case it would be like CFH, like Chief Football Head.
You might as well call it that because it's the Senior Vice President of Content Development for Franchise Properties. And that's a fancy way of saying pay a guy a lot of money to go back, watch old cartoons, and see what they can repurpose for new ones. So while I'm not a huge fan of that this day and age, this one gets a little complicated, and we'll talk about why within the episode itself, because there are some things that are left unresolved in the Hey Arnold story. Yeah.
I'm actually strangely cool with that title.
Okay.
So asking for a friend, what are the qualifications that one needs to become that level of a position? Because that seems like something that might be right up my friend's named Sean. Yeah. It might be right up his alley.
Sean has actually recently been promoted to the Senior Vice President of Content Development for Franchise Properties of Saturday Morning Cartoon. So
Oh,
congratulations,
that's cool.
buddy.
I'll
It does
take it.
not
Thanks,
come with a
guys.
pay raise. It comes with a lot more
I'm,
responsibility, and you have to
you'd be
buy your own
surprised.
business card.
You'd be
So-
surprised how many promotions come with nothing but a new title.
Pretty much all of them, I'd imagine these
Pretty
days.
much all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we bring this
So,
up because
great.
they're actually bringing this back in. Right now, it looks like the animation studio is developing it as a TV movie version. And it's actually going to pick up where the series left off. And that's pretty much where we are going to take you guys today. We're not going to cover, the first 5 seasons or the first 99 episodes. We're really going to go right to the end of a very, very different type of episode that we watched, which this was surprising to me because it was not really the Hey Arnold that I remembered. I don't even know if I actually watched this episode when it was on the air because I may have stopped watching it by this point. Yeah. So we'll talk about where that TV movie is going to pick up once we talk about the episode today. As for a synopsis for Hey Arnold itself, part and parcel, most of it, the show centers on a 4th grader named Arnold, who lives with his grandparents in an inner city boarding house in the fictional town or district or neighborhood of Hillwood. Episodes center on his experiences navigating big city life while dealing with the problems he and his friends encounter. And for me, I pretty much grew up in the same kind of situation, except for the boarding house aspect. Basically just like a kid and his friends in the city. That's pretty much how I grew up. So watching this as a kid, early teenage years, it was just a lot of fun because it was a lot of the same, the same situations that we get into. You'd play ball in the street and you'd, call out car when a car was coming and get back onto the sidewalks. You'd wait for a snow day. You'd, go down to the local pool. You'd wait for the ice cream man. The same kind of thing that kids everywhere grew up. It's just that since this was set in a city setting with kind of an alternate family style, it was really interesting for me. What are your memories of this one?
Just it was really funny because you brought up all those things that you did when you were a kid, and I didn't really grow up in a city. I grew up in a town.
Okay.
But I had all of those same experiences, doing everything. So I think the thing that is great about this is, city, town, village, wherever you grew up as a kid, this show really did a great job of resonating with its audience regarding the content and the tomfoolery that all of these kids got into.
Yeah, and I mean, you could
of their adventures.
Yeah, their adventures and the relationships with each other, and it's not one of these things where it's only like Arnold and his closest friends that get kind of fully realized. You get, all these other characters that come into it. You definitely get a lot.
He's got a pretty big squad.
He's got a good squad. Even the ones that are not great are actually pretty decent, depending on because there's bullies and there's weirdos and there's nerdy kids and there's the same.
Some of these kids have the best names too.
and they, like the character design of these things, like there is not an attractive looking kid in this group. Everybody's just weird and like stretched out in weird proportions, and they just have like weird weird facial things, or just I don't know, there's something weird about every single one of
them. Thinking about that, you're right. Everybody had one thing that was either special or unique about their character design that was sort of one exaggerated feature.
Yeah, Gerald's probably like the most normal looking of everybody.
I think his exaggerated feature was the length of his hair.
Yes, that's probably about it. Yeah.
I mean, he kind of had like a stovetop, like a stovetop.
I think that's what they would have called it. Stovepop.
Stovepop.
Yep.
He just had like a stovepipe head.
It's a combination of stovepipe and Jiffy Pop for people out there who are wondering what this style is.
Damn it.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yep. Yeah, so that was Gerald.
But yeah.
Like everybody else. So like Arnold, for whatever reason, and it's funny because they keep drawing attention to it, especially Helga Pataki, who is pretty much the only one who calls him a football head. His head's shaped like a football. He looks like a somewhat older Stewie Griffin. Now, do you remember the one episode of Family Guy where Stewie, like he had a normal shaped head and then he's bouncing on the bed and falls? I think he hits the ceiling and then falls on the floor. And it flattens his head into that weird football shape. I don't think there's ever an explanation for why Arnold has this shape of a head.
I mean, I'm going to disagree with you.
Did you
say that? I don't think there was an explanation, but other than genetics, because when you meet his mother and his father, his father has the blonde hair and his mother has a rounded head. It kind of has like a rounder head.
She has a round head. I'm talking the difference between a football and a football.
I know, but like his dad had like a really, he had a very defined butt chin.
Yeah, it was more of a ball chin.
Ball
at this
chin.
point.
Ball chin.
Straight up testicles on his chin.
So So his dad's got a ball chin, which is like a pointy feature kind of on his face. And his mother had kind of a very round, had a round face as well, and his dad had blonde hair.
No,
and so looking at his parents, I was like, this makes sense to me.
No, it made no sense. You have a cylinder with balls on it. You have.
Do I need to explain to you genetics, Dave? Because it's going to be a very short conversation.
Yeah, I'd love to hear Sean's 101 on genetics 101.
Dinosaurs. Where do they come from?
Peas, finches. Done. Evolution and genetics.
Atticus Finch, right?
No, it makes zero sense. I don't know why he ended up with like this weird elongated football shape of a head. I don't get it. I thought maybe they would have explained it or had one of his parents have slightly more football shaped head. I think he was just kind of a mute. You know how like when babies are born, their heads are kind of pliable? I think maybe they just had like a really shitty like jungle doctor.
You can move the fontanelle.
And they just squished it. They just squished it down. This actually could come into play with both the TV movie and the stuff that's unseen in this particular episode because Arnold's birth is.
I was actually thinking just about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This could be the
green-eyed
mysterious
people.
Exactly, the green eyes, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But we've never really seen the green eyes. Maybe they are football-headed tribal people, and this is just
that'd be amazing.
This is just their thing. So Arnold is like a symbolic football-headed green eye. Yeah.
It was interesting. The one thing in the synopsis that we talked about pre-show was sort of this whole inner city aspect of the show,
right?
That is included now. I know you and I both had the same idea originally when we watched the show, as I'm sure most people did, but they never actually. This is sort of like a Simpsons in Springfield moment. They never actually tell you until later episodes of The Simpsons. They never really tell you where Hey Arnold takes place or what big city it is. I had the impression, and I believe you did too, Dave, that it was New York City for the longest time.
Yeah, I think.
And then reading a little bit more about Craig Bartlett's, where he grew up and sort of the inspirations that he took from his own childhood, you get another story, but it's never really resolved or made crystal where the setting actually takes place.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like generic city urban landscape, but you get the sense that in the neighborhood it's kind of like a it's not a high class, high scale, up and coming neighborhood. It's kind of like old. There's a lot of families, there's a lot of kids, but there's a lot of just like high rises and the boarding homes and the corner stores that are like built within it's not suburbia by any stretch of the imagination. They're not like these strip malls. All the storefronts and stuff are like within the structure of the existing buildings. They go to a public school. It's called PS 118. That's the name of their school. And for me,
really leads you, New York City,
like 100% New York City, because it's like we have so many fucking kids and so many schools that we're just gonna number them. Like you don't even get names. So to me, it was 100% New York City, and I just kind of grew up. That was the closest one for me, really, that made sense. So I just assumed New York City. But yeah, all these years I had no idea.
Let us know, Craig. We want to know. We want to know where this took place.
Mr. Bartlett.
It's killing us, Mr. Bartlett.
So before we get into tonight's episode discussion, do you want to talk about this theme song, which is one of my all-time favorites, not just for Nicktoons, but for pretty much any cartoon ever?
And I want to throw it back to you with the question, Dave, why did you love this theme song so much?
Because I was a sax player from
you have the best
age of about like 7, I guess. What'd you say?
I know, this is the exact answer that I wanted, so thank you for indulging me.
Yeah. I started playing sax when I was, like 7 or 8. On alto, I've played alto, bari, and tenor for like 15 years. I actually miss playing right now. So as soon as I heard this song again, which I could play when I was a kid, man, I really just want to go back and play. So it's really cool to just like hear the song. It's kind of a jazzy tune. I don't think it's synthesized. It was hard to tell, but I don't think it was synthesized. I think it was like live sax playing. At least I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping that it was.
Okay.
But it was just fun for me because you introduce all these characters in like a weird kind of way. Nobody really gets names except Arnold, because they say "Hey Arnold" about 50 times. But you just get an
the show's not called Hey Gerald.
Hey what?
The show isn't called Hey Gerald.
Hey Gerald.
Hey Helga.
Yeah, there was no spinoff like Hey Gerald, Hey Stinky,
Hey Stupid Kid.
there's nothing like that. But yeah, you get all these there's these weird little like Foleys, and there's these weird little sound effects, and all the different characters are introduced in different ways. And I just thought it was fun because it's really about Arnold and his friends. That's it. That's all you really need to know.
Right.
Do you have any
And what a gentleman. What a gentleman this Arnold is.
Okay, go on.
As well. the entire theme song, he is being beckoned by somebody,
True.
by Helga Pataki, who is screaming, "Hey Arnold," in different intonations. There's this one shot where I love, that was always memorable to me. It's a very close, like it shows the intimacy of the city to this group of people.
Yeah.
Where you see all of the faces in the back of people's heads as they're leaning out windows.
Oh yeah.
And there's sort of like a spotlight on Arnold and his friends. Yeah. Seeing what's going on, because this person just will not shut up screaming, "Hey Arnold," in the middle of the fucking street.
Let me ask you, when you were a kid in your bedroom, right? Did your friends come by and not bang on the door, not call you, just scream your fucking name in like the summer, right? So you're home in the summer, your window's open, you're just hanging out in your room. Do your friends ever come over and just, "Hey Sean," just yell because they knew you were probably there?
No, honestly, I think that they just came over and they just knocked on the door.
I had the most just primitive friends then, because I had like just the neighborhood full of kids. If the window was open or if they just came by, they would just scream, "Hey David!" And like, I would either poke my head out the window or not, so I could ignore them. They never would knock on the door. Never knock on the door.
Really?
Probably because my dad would just terrify them. But yeah, so they would just yell, and I'd go to the window and just be like, "Hey, what's up? What are you guys doing?" They'd either be going to the pool or they'd be going to the ice cream shop or whatever. So yeah, that was my summer. Was basically "Hey Arnold" intro.
We also had designated times for certain things.
Oh really?
So so like Saturday morning we would ride our bikes to this arcade.
Oh okay, yeah.
That was about maybe like 2 miles from the development that we lived in, and it was something where like we all knew that we were leaving at 10 o'clock, and we all knew to meet at one person's house.
Well, yeah, that's another thing. Like if
we were organized.
Yeah, well, we weren't, because
probably
not. If a neighbor, like if a neighbor's mom or dad was just taking him to the pool or taking him to the mall, they would just yell, "Hey David!" And if I was there, they'd be like, "You want to go to the mall?" And I'd just run downstairs and hop in the car and we go to the mall and play at the arcade. Or I just would ignore them and just stay home and play video games. So like,
right,
yeah, but it was great because there was like, it was instant. It was like even faster than text messages, because you just yell through an open window, and if you're there, you go, and if you're not, you don't. And same kind of thing as "Hey Arnold." So it was very much like an immediacy for me. It was just kind of like swap the name and change some of the kids' faces and names, and it's pretty much the same thing. So I always thought it was really cool. And I love things like, I can't remember this kid's name, but he's kind of like the real creepy looking dude.
Oh, the one with the glasses.
Yeah, glasses. Like
who in the theme song
glasses.
He holds the glass. He holds the
flashlight
in front of his face.
And like
yeah,
a girl
I know the guy.
Screams in the background. I just love those little gags within the intro too. So it's one of my favorites.
And it's just interesting to see that, like, at the very end they have. So I know. This will be a weird comparison. Sort of how at the very end of the American version of the X-Men theme song, we have all of the X-Men lining up, and then we have all the villains coming in like a kind of head-to-head battle at some point. And in this, we sort of have Hey Arnold and his friends, and then we have Helga Pataki and her friends all kind of lining up. And then in the moment where you think that there's going to be something that happens,
a rumble.
Helga just says, "Move it, football head," and Arnold, just as a pure gentleman, just simply bows away and allows her to pass. That's right. And then turns around and does like the classic like mugging back to the camera, and it just, "Hey Arnold," starts up.
Start it up. And so we mentioned, each of these had 2 segments. Before we get into tonight's episode discussion, I just wanted to give kind of a background for some other episodes that I watched. This one that I went back and watched just because it was one of my favorites and one that I remembered, but it actually ties into tonight's episode too. So I watched, this first one I watched was season 1, episode 3. The first segment was called Arnold's Hat, and the second segment was called Stoop Kid. Now, most of you out there who watch Hey Arnold probably remember Stoop Kid. Stoop Kid's afraid to leave a stoop. It's a classic episode.
It's like it's the classic episode.
It's a classic episode. And it's like the third one into the series. So like that, you were on solid ground once you watch that. And I watched it today and it really holds up. Or the other day and it really holds up. The interesting thing about Arnold's hat, you not only get a peek into the relationship between Arnold and Helga. So Helga outwardly just kind of bullies Arnold, and she makes his life hell, and she goes out of her way to like frustrate him, and he doesn't really he doesn't really care, but he doesn't really understand why. She's just kind of this nuisance. But then you find out in these weird little like soliloquies and these little asides with Helga that she monologues for days,
and
like Shakespearean sonnets. Like her vocal patterns change and her choice of words change and the music changes. It's really great that she just professes her undying love to him to like no one in particular. And you find out this is the episode where she has the shrine. Yeah.
Oh my God. Is that
so fucking creepy?
Oh, I remember that one.
She's got
like hair.
She's got the whole thing is made of chewed up bubble gum from Arnold over the years. It's a full size Arnold shaped statue of bubble gum with like a coin for one eye and like a button for another one, and clothes, and it's got 4 arms like a Hindu god for some reason. And this one, it's called Arnold's hat, right? So she looks at this statue, her shrine to her beloved, and it's just got this gap in the middle of his head because that's where his hat should go. And without getting into the story, she gets his hat at one point and then he gets it back. But what I thought was interesting about this particular episode is this is the first time that you are aware that his parents actually gave him that hat before they disappeared and more or less orphaned him and left him with his grandparents, his paternal grandparents, at their boarding house. So this is the first time that you're not just getting the story of this kid's life, but you're learning like this backstory, like, oh shit, something like odd happened here. So I thought that was really cool. That's the first time you see it. I watched another one. Do you remember anything about like Helga and just like her obsessions? Do you remember anything offhand?
Yeah, I mean the Arnold's hat episode jumps to mind as being quintessentially creepy.
Oh, yeah. There's a moment where she like picks up his head because it's like on a removable stick.
Yeah, and she like kisses it.
She kisses it, and all the gum sticks to her face, and it's just the most disturbing thing in the world. It's real gross. Little girls out there, if you really like a boy in your class, don't do whatever you got to do, but don't make a bubblegum shrine out of him, please.
Yeah.
Anything else is fine. That goes for boys too. Just please don't. No bubblegum shrines.
Yeah. But I mean, you think about relationships back in that presumably middle school era.
Yeah.
Is I think where they are.
Yeah, like, for them. Yeah. Well, they're in like 4th grade.
Are they in 4th grade?
They started out in 4th grade. Yeah.
Okay. You think about them like in that early age, like that's when there was that dynamic, or that is when there's that dynamic of if you like somebody, you kind of pull their hair and you push them down and you give them shit.
I love that she was like a real jerk to him because it was just like that's the only way she knew how to express her feelings and her frustrations. But the bubblegum shrine in the closet was a little much. I love that her mom just threw it out. She's like, you never see her mom. Helga comes up to her.
Right.
Well, you see her later on, and I'll get to that in Parents' Day, but you see her later on, but in this episode you don't see her. And she's like, hey, Mom, did you see like a weird pile of trash in my room that didn't mean anything and wasn't totally a love shrine to anybody? And she's like, yeah, honey, I threw it in the trash. So, yeah.
Oh, God.
That's that moment. So that's, I don't want to get sidetracked on that, but that's that episode. And then just real quick, I watched another one. It's season 1, episode 5 called Heat Snow. And it's basically one where the entire city has this insufferable heat wave for the first segment, and then Arnold and his friends get a snow day for the second one, and it's one of my all-time favorites. I actually was singing the song that there's a postal worker that's like, he's trudging through the snow and delivering the mail, and he's got this little song that he sings as he's walking. It's just weird little aside. He's just like, I hate the snow. I hate the snow. I hate the rain and I hate sleep, but man, I sure do hate the snow. And he just keeps singing it over and over and over again. And I like sang it to my girlfriend the other day, and she's just like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what? It's not even snowing. It's like 80 degrees outside." And this is what I do. This is my random cartoon knowledge coming from the back of my mind somewhere. So I had to watch that one, right? Okay, now I'll get off my nostalgia wave and I'll get into what we're talking about for tonight's episode. So we're going to jump ahead.
Would you like me to give you a little recap on the journal? On the episode that we did watch?
Before we even do that, and I would like you to do that, but I want to give people a little bit of background first with another season 5 episode, season 5 episode 6, and it's called Parents' Day. This one's interesting because it's not technically a 2-segment thing. It's one episode that has a story the full way through. And this is, I believe, the first time that you actually see Arnold's parents. Their names are Miles and Stella. And you see them like running through a jungle from this tribe in like a very Indiana Jones setup where they're like, swinging away on vines from tribespeople, and they're jumping over crocodiles' mouths, and they're jumping into a plane, and you learn that they like get this vial of antidote or vaccine to a tribe that's in need. And then you learn that this is Arnold's grandfather's bedtime story that he's telling him. And Arnold, at this point, he's starting to grow out of these bedtime stories, right? But he's like, okay, Grandpa, great story, blah, blah, blah. And you learn that the day that's coming up at school is Parents' Day, where all the parents come and they spend the day with their kids in a competition against all the other parents. So Arnold,
such a weird.
It's weird. It's strange, but it's to set up the fact that like Arnold and other people in class say like, Arnold, what are you gonna do? You don't have any parents, and they're like, shut up! What the hell's wrong with you? And so Arnold gets it in his head like, man, he has his grandparents and they're great and all, but it's not his parents. And then the best part of this episode, I think, is the grandparents and how completely insane, but beloved and devoted and there for Arnold that they are. Even though they're older, like they're great. They're still like perfectly able to do all the things that they do. And there's this weird little like subplot between Arnold and Helga, and Helga's dad's like a real jerk. Bob Pataki and like his beepers store or whatever the hell. He's a real ass. But the main thing here is that they show Arnold as a little kid saying goodbye to his mom and dad the last time he ever saw them. And that's kind of, Arnold comes to the realization like his parents are gone, but his grandparents are here and they're still great. So that's fine. And you think maybe we'll never see from them again.
It's a very pivotal moment.
Exactly. But then we do come back to that story, which Sean's going to give you a little teaser about for season 5, episode 19. You could basically call the series finale, titled The Journal.
So on the anniversary of his parents' disappearance, Arnold decides to give up hoping that they will ever return home. But while packing up their keepsakes in the attic, Arnold finds his father's old journal.
The end.
And then that was it. That's all that happened, guys.
So that's the weird thing about
blackout end of show.
Blackout. The end. Thanks for watching 100 episodes of Hey Arnold.
Yeah.
The interesting thing in this one, and we'll get into the story here, is that it's a departure from the structure of the rest of the series, because it's not a story about Arnold and his friends. It's a flashback told through a framing story of like Arnold's grandfather Phil narrating the story from the journal. And there's a lot of like funny little moments and cuts that they do back and forth between the story of the journal and the story in current time, and that's a lot of fun. But you actually learn a lot more about Arnold's parents too. So what was your, knowing what you knew about Hey Arnold and then watching this episode, what was kind of your first reaction to the difference of the storytelling style?
My reaction was that I watched this episode twice.
Okay.
My first impression was that, so I should say this, the first time I watched it, I watched 35 minutes out of the 47 minutes.
We should mention that it is actually like a double episode. So not only is it not just 2 segments that are different, it's actually like 2 full episodes that are all dedicated to this story.
So I watched 35 minutes of this 2-parter, and then the next day I ended up just coming back and I was like, I don't remember where I left off. Yeah. I just restarted the entire thing and watched it all over again. But from that first impression, I honestly did not think that his grandfather was a reliable narrator at first. And I grew more and more concerned about it. I'm sorry?
He really wasn't for the rest of the series. Like, actually, I think it's in Parents' Day when Grandpa's telling him a story. He's like, your parents were doing this research on this terrible disease, and then Dr. Lobster Claw from the Lobster Claw Corporation busts in with his robot army, and then Arnold's like, all right, Grandpa, like, I wanted the real story here, so can you stop making stuff up?
And you would think with a story like that it would come from his grandmother.
Sorry, say that again?
Right. I was going to say, you would think that with a story like that it would have come from his grandmother.
Yeah. Can we talk about
Dr.
Grandpa
Lobster
and
Claw
Grandma
and
for a second?
Everything. So that was my first impression, was that Grandpa was not being a reliable narrator, and I got very concerned about that until when I watched it the second time, I noticed that he actually was reading the text that was in the journal, and so I was like, okay, hopefully he's not just beginning the chapter and then embellishing on top of that.
Yeah, and there's a moment where they kind of let you know that he is reading the actual story, because there's a moment that comes up where he actually rips a page out of the journal and is like, we're going to save that till you're older. So that's kind of funny.
When things get real sexy.
Sexy and steamy in the jungle.
Sexy and steamy. Hottest night in the jungle.
Oh, yeah.
God. So my second question, and I guess maybe this kind of plays back to sort of the age that we felt that Arnold is presented to us in this season.
Yeah, I don't know if he ages up with the seasons at all. Like if he
and so I'm
be like 14 at this point. 13,
right.
14. Yeah.
It's deceptive because it doesn't look like he's grown. It doesn't look like he's really matured. And so I was a little bit, I didn't know because I've seen in other episodes Arnold reading things.
Yeah.
And Arnold interacting with things and spelling stuff. But for some reason, he insisted that his grandfather read this journal to him. So there are these moments.
Yeah.
It's a lot of, and which this was curious for me, and I'm curious to go back and watch some of the series, and I'm also interested to ask you this question.
Yeah.
Did Grandpa always make a high number of poop and fart jokes?
I don't think we ever spent enough time with the grandfather to, where he's just sitting there and they're not doing anything but reading stories and eating all day. I don't think you ever spend really enough time with him because, like I said, the majority of these episodes you're with Arnold and his friends outside of the boarding house. There are relatively few episodes, I think, where you're stuck inside the house, nowhere else to go, with just Arnold and his grandfather. I don't think that happens. He's usually just comes in as kind of like this kooky character that makes a lot of these like kind of off-color comments and just like says weird stuff, but is also kind of a mentor for Arnold and to just like encourage him to like not take things too seriously. He's very, very lighthearted. He's incredibly fun, but he's also very caring and very loving and attentive too. I think it's important that he's not deranged because he can see like when Arnold is kind of like, if he's not feeling it, like if he starts telling a funny story and Arnold's like, not today. He's like, you doing okay, short man? You want me to come back later? Like, is everything all right? So he's in touch. He knows what's going on. He's kind of a cool, hip, old guy, which is very different from his wife, which is so sad.
Oh boy. Which, yeah. So, I mean, that was the only question, was that whether or not there was so many pauses and breaks, and I didn't know if they were set up and they coincided just simply with having to do actual commercial breaks in the show.
That's possible. Or I think it's a lot to do with the fact that like the story of Miles and Stella was just like, they were vignettes. It was basically one Indiana Jones adventure story after another. And I think that in order to break that up, because they were just like journal entries of like their adventures. So I think in order to break that up, they were just like, oh, Grandpa has to go take a shit. So this is kind of how
it was
they did
very,
it. It was really strange.
It was very awkward and it was very sudden, where suddenly Grandpa would stand up and he'd just be like, oh, that Kung Pao chicken catching up on me.
Right.
Gotta go to the bathroom.
Just run to the bathroom.
And then commercial break, presumably, because then the second he'd come back in and he'd just be like, I'm a changed man, light as a feather now.
It's real gross.
He's just like, okay.
There's so many gross statements that I like never want to hear my grandfather make.
Yeah, it's weird because you don't anticipate it, because it's not that it seems out of character, but you've like you said, the grandfather is really around for encouragement and some of this sage advice, not to be making poop humor jokes all the time. And I don't care. It was just something that from my understanding of that character from watching so many episodes, I didn't think that was the function that he served, and I was just surprised to see him in this episode doing just exactly that.
Well, and
that was
also
what was so interesting.
It also made it really difficult to kind of get a grip on how old Arnold is, because Grandpa's making poop jokes and Arnold's not laughing, but he's also not like saying like, all right, if you're not taking this seriously, then I'm just going to go read it myself. He's not like, he's not at the age where he's a teenager who is defiant and doesn't want anything to do with his elders. He's caught somewhere between, it's got to be somewhere in that late middle school age. But at the same time, like, his grandfather gets to a point in the story when it's like about sex, and he's, telling Arnold like, oh, hey, by the way, when your mom was pregnant with a little baby, do you know who that baby was? And Arnold's like, I don't know, maybe. Oh, wait, was it me? Yeah. Like, fuck, man. Like, were you dropped on your head when you were a kid? Because pretty obvious.
He does the whole thing where he gets up and he's just like, your mom was having a, and he mimes like a large stomach. Yeah. And he's just
rhymes
like, it
with
rhymes
maybe.
with maybe.
And then grandma pipes up.
Grandmother, which I think is now a perfect segue to get into, she yells out, rabies!
Rabies!
Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
She's amazing. And I loved her as a kid because she was such a non sequitur character. And she was always like running around like, okay, so in the episode Heat Snow, during the snow day, she's like this running gag. She's constantly just with like a dog sled team with the boarding house's cats and dogs. There's just like a bunch of cats and dogs that always run in and out of a room. She's got them all tied up on a dog sled, and she's like, "We must rescue the missionaries!" And she's just riding back and forth across the screen, and it's hilarious. In the heat part of that episode, she's actually like, she's fanning herself, and she's like, "I don't know what to do. It's so hot. The air conditioner's broke. I've got a boarding house full of people to take care of, and a young grandson that I'm responsible for." And Arnold's like, he basically looks at the camera, and he's like, "Man, it's so hot today that even grandma's acting normal." And I was like, that's so fucking sad now that I'm looking at this, because it's the only like 5 seconds where this old lady's like lucid. You know what I mean?
Right.
She's fun and she's crazy and she loves Arnold, but the stuff that she does and says is so out there that she clearly has some sort of early onset dementia. And it's something that I didn't notice until now watching it. Like as a kid, I just thought she was funny.
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching this and thinking that something was going on.
Yeah. And just think about like what Bartlett, where he drew that from.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to watch. And Dave and I have talked about this a little bit before, because of the stigma with mental illness and the difficulty that sometimes people can have about talking about mental illnesses and how they impact and affect people. And I mean, I've definitely been impacted by it in my life, and it's hard, and it's my grandfather towards the end of his life had dementia, and those things are so challenging to deal with. The sudden mood swings, and the memory loss, and not being able to place things. And this, I think, was such, if Bartlett was drawing this from his personal life, this seemed like an extremely sweet tribute to something that may have been impacting him at some point. And you, like you said, Dave, you watch this as a kid, and you maybe don't pick up on it,
right.
and you maybe don't get the subtle undertones of mental illness and these things that are there, because you see grandma waving a hoagie like a sword, or you see her standing upside down, and then and doing headstands, and grandpa pulls her kind of like a sliding door, or like a screen door, and then pulls her back, and she seems to be happy. And I think that that's the biggest thing that always stood out to me about the dynamic of the relationship, is that grandpa always seemed to be happy and loving, and so did grandma. There never seemed to be any problem. There was always such a solid understanding between those two, that it was, now as an adult, when you realize that grandpa was taking care of everything,
he couldn't together.
Rely on he could not rely on her to do anything.
But he was such you nailed it. Like, it's such a sweet relationship that I appreciate more now, because like I'm watching. Right. So I lost my grandmother a while ago, but she had dementia in the last few years of her life, and my maternal grandmother is dealing with some mental issues too. But it's cool to watch my grandfather, who's like, he's older than her, he's got like 2 bad knees and all kinds of bad stuff, but he is like the sweetest old guy taking care of her, so patient and so kind. And that's exactly how like Phil is to Gertrude, because she'll do something crazy, like be swinging from a ceiling fan, and like instead of making oatmeal for breakfast, she just like makes miso soup because she thinks she's some sort of like Japanese like samurai warrior or something.
Yeah, right.
And that was in Parents' Day. And and he's just like, "Okay, Pookie." And it's just like, he doesn't necessarily encourage her crazy behavior, but he doesn't put it down or like yell at her for it. He's just kind of like, "Okay, you're being real weird right now, but that's fine. We're just going to keep going with it." And it's so sweet because it's just a loving relationship, and you never see the really awful side of it, thankfully.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the fun thing is that in this episode, in the journal, there's this moment where he's not scolding her, he's not reprimanding her, but he is correcting her with the sandwich, and he's like, "Pookie, that wasn't you, and that wasn't the wedding that we went to. That was somebody else's wedding," in reference to Queen Diana and Prince Charles.
Yeah, she's talking about Charles and Diana's wedding.
Yeah. And she just pauses for a minute, and it was just like, "Oh." And then just kind of continues on her merry way.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so
he just kind of like guides her back to center. And it's just kind of like, "All right, come back in here. You're getting a little crazy. Let's just bring it back."
Oh, man.
But it's crazy because you have that juxtaposed to this incredible story about these two people, one kind of an anthropologist researcher out in the field, very Indiana Jones like, another one like a medical relief worker who's also out in the field in these underdeveloped places that are trying to bring medical relief and aid to these tribes. And it turns out that this is the story of how Arnold's parents meet. Okay, so it starts off very fantastic and very like adventurous, and it just gets even more so as they go on. It gets to the point that like it's laughable how tropey these kind of things are with the adventure shtick that they kind of go through. It's basically like if you would read any of the old pulp comics or watch episodes of Indiana Jones, like the Young Indiana Jones, or just watch the movies, they're like pulling these scenes straight from those adventure stories. Because it's like there's volcanoes that are exploding, and there's totems to find, and there's mysterious tribal people, and there's like mysterious illnesses that are going on, and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it just felt very...
And then they are the only people who can fix it.
They're the Great White Hope. It's like...
They're the only... Oh, jeez.
I mean, they basically were. Like, anytime that these people, like, these mysterious people needed help, they'd call in these two individuals. But it's just so out of step with everything else that Hey Arnold was about. So it just felt strange. It felt odd because you have Arnold, who's this kid in the city who's just hanging out with his friends, and it's very real and it's very relatable, and they have the same kind of problems and the same kind of misadventures and the same kind of stories that you do growing up. And then all of a sudden, you know, he's an orphan kid because his dad was Indiana Jones and his mom was Florence Nightingale.
The Dr. Quinn,
yeah,
Dr. Quinn medicine
woman. And they're like gallivanting through the South American jungles, you know, a few times a year. And that's how they happen to meet. So it's just really strange. It's a little odd. Not what I expected at all. But it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean,
so we've kind of begun to talk about the episode. Do we want to? There's a lot that's in this episode.
Yeah, and it's weird to kind of talk about because it's just I don't want to rehash just their adventures. We can kind of do the highlights of them because it's just a series of their adventures and them kind of falling in love and learning to trust each other and rely on each other. But it's like these tiny little like action adventure movies that play out throughout the course of this journal reading, interspersed by like dementia craziness and poop jokes. So it's just a really weird 40 minutes of setup and story here. You do also find out the origin of Abner the pig, which I thought was interesting.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So at the very beginning, I thought the thing that was probably the most interesting. So the date is October 5th, which is the anniversary of his parents' disappearance. It's interesting to see, you know, his grandfather comes in after Arnold has this nightmare and gives him a breakfast. And it's really, did you notice that the face that was in the breakfast that his grandfather gave to him?
Yeah, it's made out of like
was
bacon,
kind
like
of
strips of bacon and yeah.
Yeah, but it was like kind of sad and crying.
Oh, I didn't notice it was
like
crying. I thought it was a smiley face.
It was like an upset face.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't notice that.
It was like,
well, I love
his grandfather.
Isn't this the one where Arnold's nightmare was like him having an adventure with his parents out in the high seas on a boat? Was that this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like lot of these episodes open with Arnold's kind of fantastical adventure stories that are his dreams. And this is another one, but it actually tied into his parents.
Right.
And then
so you get this moment, and then, you know, he wants to be alone.
Yeah.
So he goes and he hangs out on the stoop. Right. And what does he like? It's raining, so already, you know, he wakes up and it's very dreary. Yeah. You know, it's kind of a shitty day. So, you know, on top of all the bad things that are happening, he's got to deal with crappy weather. Right. You know. So, all of his friends are just like, "Hey, we're going to this amusement park. We're going to ride this roller coaster."
One of the roller coasters, yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, you know, they're just like, "Hey, why don't you come with us?" And he's like, "No, I'm just gonna chill. Like, just not into it."
Yeah, just doesn't want to be out there.
And everybody really seems, you know, everybody seems surprised because they're just like, "Whoa, this is out of character for Arnold. Like, you're not coming with the crew. You know, we gotta go do this thing. We gotta go have fun. Got adventures to get to."
Yeah, and even like Gerald hangs back a little longer because he's like he and Arnold.
And that was that was my favorite part. Yeah. Is that you see this little bit of understanding from Gerald as his BFF, who's just like, you know, what's going on, man? And they have a moment, and Gerald's just like, hey, look, you know, I'm sorry, they didn't know. Let me chill back with you. Like, let me chill with you. Like, you know, we'll just hang out. We don't have to do anything. He's like, no, you should go. You should go. ride the roller coaster for me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll see you later. And Gerald's just like, okay, cool.
Yeah, he's like, I did my duty, but now I'm gonna go ride a roller coaster. Yeah, which is great. That's how it should be, not only for the plot, but that's how kids should be anyway. So it's fine.
So it's understandable. But then this is the moment where we're given like the sort of this Shakespearean monologue or soliloquy from Helga, who's hiding behind a car. And she is finding out about it now for the first time,
right after 5 seasons.
After 5 seasons. And so she is offended that she didn't know what was going on, and so she, what was it? She had been making fun of him when he said he didn't want to go, and my favorite line from her is she's like, "Oh, Arnold, let me repent my cruel words." Yeah. It's like, oh boy, here we go.
But then you don't hear from her anymore the rest of the episode because it's all about Arnold's parents. It's just a throwaway thing.
She's got
and that's like her last lines of the series, man. That's it.
Yeah, she's got like one physical comedy thing, and her final line is her blowing raspberries at Arnold, going like,
"See you later, loser,"
walking off screen.
And that's it. That's all you get. And then it's interesting here because there's some things that kind of hint that Arnold is growing up a little bit, and I think that's kind of the next thing that plays out. Like, Arnold watches his friends go to hang out at the amusement park. He's still upset over the loss of his parents. He's still upset that he doesn't know what happened. So he's just like, you know what, that's it. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of feeling this way. So he gathers all their belongings up in a box. So he gets the pictures of him that he still has. He throws his hat in a box. That was really like the key moment.
That frightened me.
Yeah.
Like when I saw him put that little tiny hat. Because it always makes me think of the Tiny Hat SNL sketch.
Okay.
If you've ever seen it. I
don't know that one.
I'll have to send this to you later. But look it up if you're listening. It's the SNL Tiny Hat sketch. It's phenomenal. But it for some reason, obviously, this came first. Hey Arnold came first, and then the Tiny Hat sketch came, I think, in the 2000s at some point. But every time I saw the Tiny Hat sketch, it made me think of Hey Arnold.
Okay.
And just the size of this little cap that he was wearing. But when he throws it in the box, there was a moment where I was like, oh shit, like,
is he?
Oh, like this really felt sort of like you said, like this was the pivotal moment where this character is growing up.
Well, and the crazy thing for me was that I had just watched the Hat episode, right? So you're talking like an episode 4 years and change earlier, which I had just watched like a half an hour before, but you were just seeing, like, there's a whole montage of Arnold with his hat. Like, he wakes up with a hat on. He goes in the shower and he has
never
the
takes
hat
it
on.
off.
He never takes a hat off. He move it to like dry out his hair and comb it and part it, but he never takes the hat off. So the fact that like he loses the hat in that episode, like people are looking at him like, oh, did you get a bad haircut? Oh, you look terrible. What happened to you? And like, it's just this identity thing. And then you learn that his parents gave it to him. That lends this moment so much more gravity. And then Grandpa actually catches him like throwing the hat away into this box, and he's like, I don't want to think about my parents anymore. They're gone. I'm over it. I just don't want to deal with it anymore. And he's putting all the stuff away.
You need to think about this. Yeah. This is really strong.
Yeah.
For the period that this is coming out, like this is really strong for a kid's cartoon.
Yeah, especially wrapping an entire series up. Yeah.
Yeah, you think sometimes, you want series and you want your characters to go out on like a fun high note, and this is like 2001 after 5 seasons of this show of friends and hijinks and adventures and stuff like that, and all of a sudden it gets this really serious moment, and it, you want them to enjoy it. Like you don't want this to be like a end of The Sopranos Don't Stop Believing episode, moment.
The weirdest thing is the end of this episode. Just Arnold just sees a hitman walk in, and then the screen just cuts to black. That was the weirdest ending.
It's don't stop.
Done.
Believe it.
The end.
Finn. And so it's really interesting. But in this moment where he throws the hat away, pivots. Thankfully finds this journal on the floor.
Yeah, which was funny because it really broke up that heavy moment of just like, oh my God, it's my dad's journal, and then like it's all back on again, and he grabs the hat back out of the box and puts it on, and it's like, okay.
And so it's fun because they have this shot of him like beginning to walk down the stairs holding the journal, and I'm like, he doesn't have his hat. Go back and get his hat. And he pauses and he just goes, oh, he runs back up. comes back with the hat. I'm like, okay.
So they break.
Never has a hat been so fucking important regarding a character than this
Arnold's
stupid boy with no name.
Yeah.
With no last name.
Well, that's funny. They mention that later on.
I know they have a little joke with this too.
It's very funny.
So it's good.
But then,
we get to this whole point where
it's just Grandpa narrating this journal, which I think is funny because a lot of these things, like, they leave a lot of plot holes. Like, how did they get a hold of this journal if, his parents, who had disappeared off the face of the earth, how did they write all the way up until the point where they left? Did they just decide, like, I'm going to leave this behind while I go on this adventure? Like, really?
I will say this is amazing. What's amazing about this journal is that there are a lot of illustrations that are in it.
Yeah.
And Miles, or Arnold, I want to say, like, I almost feel like Hay is his first name and Arnold is his last name. Yeah. We should mention and note that Arnold does not have a last name.
Yeah,
in the entire series.
Nobody does.
A majority of the secondary characters. Yeah, nobody in Arnold's family has a last name. Right. It's just grandmother, grandpa.
Who are Phil and Gertrude.
Gil and Gertrude.
I keep
Arnold
saying Phil. It's like Phil or Gil or.
Yeah, I thought it was Gil.
I heard Gil and I read Phil, so I don't know which one it is. I've read both.
Okay. Really?
Yeah, which is weird.
Okay.
We'll check it later. We'll fact check.
We'll fact check later.
Yeah.
So tweet at us and let us know what we're doing.
Phil, #Phil, #Gil.
So, you have all these kind of like fun moments where they don't have this last name, and so every other character in this show has a first and a last name.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is just interesting to note.
Yeah. And even like the parents.
Yeah.
So obviously if Arnold doesn't have a last name, then we don't know the last names of Miles and Stella, who are Arnold's parents. But it's funny to watch them kind of fall in love because Miles is the real kind of like, he's adventurous and he's physically capable of stuff and he's a fairly smart guy, but he's like super clumsy and awkward. And luckily Stella is trained in the healing arts, so every time he screws up and like injures himself or falls down a hillside or crashes something, that she just kind of patches him up, and that's how their relationship kind of starts, with him being all banged up, usually by sacrificing himself for something, and then she patches him up in the tent.
Just getting that good old frontier medicine.
That's right, Dr. Quinn.
In many cases, it wasn't like it wasn't even something where she's giving him an Advil or some type of like anti-inflammatory. She's just wrapping his head in tape.
Yeah. She's just like putting him in traction, basically.
Yeah.
Every single time. And we should mention that they're in like the Amazon, but they're in I believe, fictional place called San Lorenzo.
Yes.
I'm assuming it's fictional.
Oh, I have no idea. I'm terrible with geography.
Zero clue.
It could be real. It could be real, and I could be astounded. I want to call up AAA tomorrow and just be like, I'd like to book a trip to San Lorenzo
on a biplane and never come back.
Yeah, right. I'm looking to run away permanently from all my responsibilities and my children
and the child that we made.
And the child.
What's interesting though is that they're like, so when Grandpa's telling the story, he's like, oh, it's a story about they're like a honeymoon in Rio or something. So they do talk about like real places there.
Yeah, right.
And then there's like a weird throwaway where Arnold's like, you told me they honeymooned at the North Pole. And he was like, oh, I was probably just making that up. So it goes back to your point about the unreliable narrator. Like, how much stuff has he made up? Is he still making stuff up? What exactly happened to him? We don't know. And that, to go back to what we talked about at the intro, that is what the TV movie is going to kind of like delve into a little bit more. But this show takes so many twists and turns about like, you think they're going to like die or something's going to happen to them so many different times, and they keep getting themselves out of situations that it makes it seem like they're very, very capable of still being alive this many years later.
I would assume as much. God, I can't imagine them picking up this
just dead
cartoon
parents?
With the realization that his parents
just
died.
Send Arnold on like a quest for like the lost city of gold, and he just finds 2 football-shaped head skeletons in the middle of the jungle.
Just one with a ball chin, and like another with a rounded face.
That'd be so dark. And then just Eduardo standing over their corpses with a machete.
Telling them that like, you're the only one that can do this. The green-eyed people need these bones, and they're like, all right,
let's talk about these green-eyed people. So,
let's do it.
So Miles and Stella are there basically on like a mission trip at this point. And
you had a big deep sigh with this. Is everything okay?
Everything's fine. I was just really frustrated by the green-eyed people because they're just okay. They're basically just meant to frustrate you because they ask. So Miles and Stella end up helping them out. I forget how do they help them out to begin with before even the serum and any of that. Is this when they got the artifact away from the pirate, the random pirate?
Right. Well, okay. No. The whole beginning of this journey is that they, Eduardo tells them about a hike that they should take.
Yes, together
and
by themselves.
Correct.
Yes.
And so Stella questions, well, why didn't Eduardo come with us? Right. To Miles' response is, well, Eduardo says this is really something you have to do once in your life.
You only want to do once. Yeah.
You only want to do once.
So it's not an enjoyable hike.
You can tell because by the time they get to the top of this small summit, they are covered in dirt. They're extremely exhausted.
Not happy.
Stella is crawling on her hands and knees.
I love that he didn't help her to the top. He just got there and then just waited for her ass to haul it up.
Just they are both pissed. They get to the top of this. They stand up, and the mountains there's a landslide.
Yeah,
and they fall into the river, and they're going to die. They are going to die,
100%
and they
fall.
They super cartoon death, and so they fall over this waterfall, and there's like a net that saves them. That they bounce on this net, and they fall into this cave that's behind the waterfall. And they're saved. And they're like, what the fuck just happened to us?
There's like baskets of food and everything laid out for them and like torches lighting the way. It's very romantic. Very romantic.
And there's somebody that's climbing up a ladder that's in a far room in front of them. And they, Miles, being the archaeologist that he is, deciphers some of the green eye stuff. He understands and he sees some of their symbology or their iconography that they have that's up on the wall.
Yeah, carvings and stuff.
And he's just like, oh shit, these are the people, these are the green-eyed people. Like this is incredible. And so, for saving their lives, then Stella and Miles rescue this stolen green-eyed artifact from presumably some pirate or some river smuggler pirate that stole it from them, right? Which is such a weird toss away. Because they escape.
Yeah, it's just like an adventure moment. It's one of these like Indiana Jones things where it's like, oh, we'll get this artifact back and we'll get to swing on a vine and this pirate's going to be real upset. And then,
the interesting thing about this is that they do get the artifact. And as they're swinging on this vine over, they drop the artifact and Stella kind of like sees it for a second. And Miles just goes, no, and covers it back up. And he just simply his comment or his line is something about, I've been told that it's too secret even for eyes, and I'm just like,
he basically says like, it's too sacred to look upon it or something like that. So, but she's just like, whoa, just like full staring at it, and so she knows what it is. Miles never even looks at it. He's like, no, it's too sacred to stare upon it. And they kind of just like they get to the green-eyed place and they drop it off in like this area that's like set up for rituals or whatever. And basically, before they even get like 2 paces away, the sucker's gone. And in its place is a little trinket left by whoever green-eyed ghost swooped through there and picked the thing up. And it's kind of like a token of appreciation and kind of saying like, okay, you are now basically like metaphorically one of us. So they are now kind of part of this green-eyed tribe, which comes into play at least 50 more times in the next like half an hour.
Right.
Is this when they get married?
So yeah, this is they have this moment
tribal
where
wedding.
So they well, I want to mention the one key thing that comes into play time and time again is that at all of these temples for the green-eyed people, there's always copious amounts of butterflies.
Yeah, there's butterflies everywhere. There's usually some
butterflies,
smoke or something going on.
Right. And so they have all this stuff. And so the fulfillment of this adventure and the token of the green-eyed people is kind of the when they decide that they are going they're going to seal the deal. And you begin the story with Miles writing and saying, I've met the woman that I'm going to marry today.
Yeah, and Grandpa making a joke like, oh, hope it's your mother. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
It's pretty funny.
so they get into all of this stuff, and so they get married. The wedding is fun. They had a couple fun little bits
a little joke
that were kind of scattered in there for humor. They have for some reason in this San Lorenzo, they have the ability to get ice carvings
I think that
carvings
was
of
literally
swans.
just a gag to show how long they had been standing there for
The passage
ceremony.
of time. Yeah.
Because the thing just melts completely, and the sun tracks from dawn to sunset, just as this little shriveled up tribal guy just like reads a scroll in some ancient language. It's just bizarre.
And so they get to the point in reading the scroll where they say Miles, and they're about to say his last name. Or no, they say, "I now pronounce you Mr. and Mrs." Right. And then it cuts to grandma.
Yeah.
It cuts to a guy in the thing like burping, grandma is eating like a huge pot of like just chili or stew or something like refried beans, and she just burps out loud. and they don't go back to it. They don't address it. They don't dwell on it for a significant period of time with any of these grandpa jokes. Yeah,
we never gave them a last name, so you never get one. Yeah.
But the important thing that comes afterwards is that now that they're married, this is when we have earthquake number 1.
Yeah. So it's just like random earthquake.
This is key. These butterflies and this earthquake, these things are going to be called back to.
Yes.
And so, these are important, significant things that happen on the day to kind of mark the occasions. And then suddenly, like a little baby in a basket on a river, like a biblical story. Suddenly we just get a little basket that just a little bassinet.
It's a gift from the green-eyed people for the wedding.
Who's in it?
It's a little pig. What should we name her?
It's a little. What was Stella's name?
I can't remember what she wanted to name it, but then like Miles, like he picks this pig up and like unwraps a blanket, and he's like, because she says something like, maybe we should name her Ellie, and then he's like, maybe we should name him Abner. So they basically just looked at Pigcock, and that was the gag for the kids. So like that's the gag, and then we move to like, this is one of the cuts where it goes back to Grandma and Grandpa, and Grandpa, they have just had like these giant plate of sandwiches, these hoagies. And then Grandpa's just like, I think this is the moment where they say this is like the hottest night in the jungle, because Grandpa like rips the page out of the journal, hides it, and he's like, "Short man, go order us some Chinese food." And he's like, "But Grandpa, we just ate like a platter of sandwiches." And they're like, "Just go do it." Yeah. This is the moment. So he like uses that as like so he hides for whatever reason, Miles decided to like write down explicit sexual maneuvers, I guess, with his new bride in the journal.
Just some crib notes.
He probably just drew some, like Kama Sutra pictures or whatever of just like his bald chin wherever he wanted to place it, and that's just too strong for Arnold. So Grandpa had to hide that from him.
Wherever is not the key word in there. He's putting that bald chin everywhere.
Bald chin deep.
That bald chin deep. Oh Jesus. Deep. Oh man.
That's how you make babies.
So yeah. That's how
I love it though, because that's just another like awkward moment of like, I don't know how old Arnold is, so he doesn't understand sex yet. Let's have him go out of the room and order Chinese food.
Right.
So that's like the one segment.
To the point that they have this immediate, like supposedly silly bit that I'm sure that I did not get as a child. Okay. I now get it as an adult, where Grandpa is opening his fortune cookie. And he just goes, "Oh, must be my lucky day." And the 3 numbers that it says are 13, 13, 666. And you're like, "What the fuck?"
Not real lucky.
Like,
isn't he also like
in that moment?
Isn't he singing like this fairly racist kind of like Chinese sing-song song?
Yeah, it was a little. Yeah, it was a little upsetting.
Yeah, but he probably fought in the Korean War, so I'm gonna be like, "That's okay, that's fine."
Yeah, about like how much he loves Chinese food and how great Chinese food is, but it has a slightly racist undertone to it.
Slightly incredibly overt, and you'll know it when you hear it. Yeah.
I was uncomfortable watching it. That was the only moment in this episode where I was like, you know what? In terms of like tuning and time, they really could have dropped this little bullshit piece right here. Like it served nothing.
Weird choice. Ugh. But then so they go from the Chinese food, and now they hop to the next adventure where it's Miles and Stella's honeymoon in Rio. And they like get in Rio, and I guess they're going up to whatever the super famous mountain is there with, Big Arms Jesus on top of the mountain. And they're like going up this tram, and they get into this other adventure. Now this is like a cliffhanger adventure, because one of the trams malfunctions and it kind of like breaks away from the cable. So
it's like a cable car, like you would use like
train.
skiing, I guess, like in the
like
Alps
ski
or something
lifts
like that.
or the Alps or wherever, just
like a chalet, ski chalet.
A chalet. So they go into like super heroic action mode again. Like Miles jumps on top of the other tram across the way, and he like whips.
I'm just blown away by this.
It was crazy. He just like he has a whip because he's Indiana Jones basically. He whips the other cable car and pulls it towards him with superhuman strength, and they get the cable cars close enough to get most of the passengers off. Now, if this was me, I probably just would have let this little kid drop if he didn't want to come over and we were trying to help him. But so there's this one little kid that's left in the other tram, and he's scared, and he's tucked away in like the far corner. He doesn't want to come across. So Stella's like, "Well, if you're not going to come to me, then I'll come to you." And she like slides down the whip, jumps into this falling tram, basically, scoops the kid up, and then just tries to like shimmy him back to the other tram. Well, while this is happening, both of them kind of like start to give way, and I think Miles and Stella end up on the one that's falling away like into the water, right?
Right.
They're like riding this thing
and
basically to their death, and they decide like, we got to bail out and we'll drop into the water again. Now they're dropping from like 200 feet in the air.
Yeah, it's an interesting, and I'm glad that they did the transition the way that they did, because you see them getting into all these death-defying situations, and you're just like, how do they get out of this? And
it's just Die Hard.
I think this is a great storyteller mark where, you know, they're not going to show you everything that happens. They don't need to show you every piece of action, and so they have them jumping from this cable car into the water, and then, you know, there's kind of a splash, and in that instance, you see Stella kind of come out of the water, but she's in a bathing suit.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow. And then she walks over to the poolside, and you see that Miles is there, like with his arm. Again, he's like up in traction, like with his arm in a sling.
It was a funny transition.
And everything.
Yeah.
And then who the fuck shows up but this cock block?
Oh, hello. My name is Eduardo. I come with a gift from the green-eyed people. He's the worst.
He comes with not even a gift. He comes with a message.
He's like, if you're having an okay day, and Antonio Banderas walks in, and he's just like, you know,
you're just like, this asshole. I gotta deal with this guy.
Desperado. And
I'd ask him about bad movies and be like, hey, how was making Automata?
Yeah, no, you shouldn't ask him any of those.
How was that nightmare?
He'd kill you. So Eduardo comes in. He's like, hey, sorry to bother you again, but not really. The green-eyed people need another thing for you to do, and you're the only ones that can do it. Blah 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 blah. So they go on this other adventure. Now, this one introduces this like sleeping sickness that is apparently afflicting the Green Eyes. And Miles and Stella are the only ones who can put together an antidote in the most ridiculous possible way that you can come up with. It's like, it's the strangest treasure hunt, world traveling, inefficient way to do anything that I've ever probably seen.
Yeah.
This was very much like an Indiana Jones moment, though, again, because it was like they're in a plane and they're traveling to different places, and it shows kind of like the overlay of their plane traveling across the map. But give me your thoughts on this, how they handled this.
I'm blown. I mean, you're absolutely 100% correct, and I agree with you. This is the most inefficient way to do all of this. Right. What blew me away is that they return to where the Green-Eyed Temple is, or where this new Green-Eyed Temple, Green-Eyed People Temple is. Yeah. And so they get there, and they see that the butterflies are dying. Right. And within 30 seconds, and I know that this is a part of the story, and they can't take too much time with this as a cartoon, you know. And so, but it's just one of those things where like Stella sees it, and she's like, and she sees these butterflies dying, like, you know, unable to fly, and they're withering, and she's like, Miles, it's the sleeping sickness. And you're like, oh yeah, obviously. Clearly,
we've
it
never
has to
heard
be.
of this before, but that's
no other possible thing.
Now I don't know, you know, if when
to mention that
if when we were introduced to Stella, if she said like, I'm here to help cure them with the sleeping sickness, if she said that, I missed it. I thought she was just there to like bring general help or whatever. But
yeah,
she
teach people in that region about hygiene and safe sex.
Yes, just rip out journal pages. Kids don't need to know.
Yeah,
she instantly nails the disease, and then she's like, okay, we got to put together a serum, and here's what we need. We need red moss from like this one river. We need a nose hair of a Bolivian boar, and we need this root of a sapote tree. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, you would assume they're all just like in the area. No, they have to fly to like 3 different continents to find this stuff. And it takes you on like this 5-minute journey of just like these weird little, it's like a montage of pain for Miles.
it's funny that you say it's a montage of pain, because it's a montage of pain followed by another montage of Stella putting together a cure.
Yeah, so you've got montage of pain and then montage of butterflies just dying.
Just montage on montage on montage.
Man.
Also, in what scientific community does doing work on a butterfly translate into this is ready for human trials?
All scientific communities. Maybe the green-eyed people are just butterfly people.
They better be. They better be butterfly people.
They better be butterfly people.
Better be mariposa.
Mariposas.
Like, just it's incredible. So they bring them this cure, and life is good.
Yeah, everything's great
until they're clinking some glasses, putting them up, doing a little cheers.
Maybe make a baby
on the on the stoop of this little San Lorenzo hut that they have.
That's right.
And this is my favorite part that happens, is that Stella takes a drink of a glass.
Oh yeah.
And then she immediately throws the glass and just goes, "Oh!" And Miles is like, "What's wrong?" She's like, "Oh, as soon as it hit my stomach, it just felt so bad." And just like, okay, what? Like, I'm thinking to myself, she's got sleeping sickness, or she's got.
I thought that for a second, and then I was like, no, they've gone so far with this episode.
She
so
has
far.
to be.
She has to have morning sickness or whatever.
She has to be pregnant.
Has to be pregnant, and that's when they cut back to this weird scene between Grandpa and Arnold, where Grandpa is trying to be like, no, she wasn't sick. No, she wasn't feeling bad. She was having She was going to have a
maybe.
Rhymes with maybe, and then Grandma yells, rabies!
Rhymes with maybe.
And then Arnold eventually puts two and two together and figures out that that's when he was about to be born. You know, that was like the earliest part of his conception, basically. So it's kind of sweet, though. They go back to this beach where it's just Miles and Stella's becoming increasingly pregnant, and they're just kind of like hanging out, and they're just, you know, chilling with Eduardo in the jungle.
Yeah. Things are going really well for them.
Up until
suddenly they're sitting back on that same stoop in their San Lorenzo hut, and they're eating dinner, and Stella goes to take a bite of something on a plate and just throws the plate. Like,
I love that
breaking silverware and glasses.
I love that plates and silverware and cutlery just comes so easily to them in the middle of the jungle that you can just break everything that you own because you have a bout of morning sickness. But no, basically at this point Arnold's like, the baby's coming. So they need to get to whatever the closest hospital is. Unfortunately, what's standing in their way?
Everything's standing in their way.
Pretty much everything you can think of as far as natural disasters.
Natural disasters.
Like, it's basically Pompeii is standing right in front of them. Yeah. This huge volcano, which has kind of like rumbled and smoked before, and you know we had seen evidence of with the earthquake from earlier, but now this thing is like full on gonna explode. And Eduardo even says, like, at one point he's like, don't worry, it makes a lot of noise but it never really does anything. This thing blows its top, man, to the point that it's like, did you ever watch Congo? Michael Crichton's Congo.
What a bad movie.
It's so bad, but I love it so much. The end scene with Congo is basically they're escaping like a volcano and a river of lava that's just incinerating these laser wielding gray death apes at the end of this movie, which is fucking awesome. Go watch Congo. But they're surrounded by lava at this point, and the only means of escape that they have is this little stone fortress that is part of the green-eyed people's civilization, I guess. And they see like this little wisp of green smoke, and that's the only way that they're able to get to safety so that they can actually have Arnold in a somewhat safe place.
So they use this clever metaphor of a volcano erupting to signify what it's like for a woman to give birth.
Hot lava. Which,
I'm not a woman, nor have I ever been able to give birth. So I'm just going to assume that that's the correct metaphor.
I'm going to assume you're just spewing hot lava. I'm going to stay the fuck away.
Right.
Yeah. But it's interesting. They do this weird, there's like this weird kind of mystical thing that happens. We'll get to Arnold's namesake in a second though too, but there's like this weird mystical thing that happens when like, there's basically chaos all around them. This volcano is exploding, you know, rocks and shit's flying everywhere, and lava is like being diverted around this temple, but it's rising up. It's burning everything in its path. Birds are flying away, and like it's just this noisiest thing. And then as soon as Arnold's born, the volcano stops erupting. Everything just goes still and quiet. And they're just like, as soon as he came into this world, everything got still and peaceful. It's like, wow, is he supposed to be some sort of like mystical omen child? Like, what are we doing here?
That's what I'm curious about. Like, he was born in a lost civilization's temple
during a volcanic eruption.
During a volcanic eruption,
and he shut it down.
His birth, silenced a rainforest.
It's such a weird turn to make, though, man. With the rest of the show, such a weird turn to make. And then,
I mean, this is something that would if they dig into this would require you to suspend.
Yeah, forget everything else you know about Hey Arnold except this episode, because nothing else.
This is no Stoop Kid.
No,
this is Volcano Boy.
Volcano Boy. Shark Boy and Lava Girl. This is like. So at this point, Arnold gets his namesake, right? And it's Stella who names him, because I think it's actually her father's name. Yeah, it's Stella's father's name. And you see like someone in the bushes, presumably a green eye. Someone's in the bushes and it hears his name Arnold, and I think he even says like Arnold, and then he just like runs away. Arnold. So that's not fucking like terrifying at all, right? You've got a crazy magic
that's fucking terrifying
who knows your name as a child and is running off to his tribe. So I have no idea what's going on with these people. And you'd think like, okay, they survived this thing, they cured the sleeping sickness, Eduardo's debt has been paid, they got their baby, maybe now it's time to go back home. And for a time, you're correct. They do go back. They stay with Miles' parents, who are, Arnold's grandparents that to come to know and love. And they have a really nice year, basically, raising Arnold. And he's playing with
They celebrate the birthday. Celebrate a first birthday.
And Arnold's running around in diapers. He's playing in the mud. He's playing with all his friends, which I thought was a nice touch when they actually showed like all the neighborhood friends as like little kids.
That was really cool.
That was cute. So they all look basically the same, just like in baby form. So it's like reverse Rugrats. And they show all this cool stuff, and you think like, okay, well, they survived all these things. Like, what the hell could possibly happen? Motherfucking Eduardo again. He like shows up there basically like at the playground, I think, and he's like, I'm sorry to ask you one more favor from the green eyes.
How is this guy finding them?
The sleeping sickness has a return. Antonio, get out of here. They should have just said no at this point. So this is where they're like, and I think Miles even in his journal is like, we had to do it one last time. The people need us. They don't have anybody else they can count on, and we're kind of like their go-to. And he's like, but I really don't want to leave my 1-year-old son behind, but luckily we leave him in the capable hands of my parents. And there's this really sad scene of little Arnold, watching his parents leave. And it's a little counter to what we saw on Parents' Day, where he's actually old enough to say like, bye mommy, bye daddy. In this point, he doesn't really say anything. He just sees them leave. And that's it. Their plane just kind of like flies off into the clouds, and that's kind of where the story ends. And that's where the journal ends, and that's where Grandpa's narration ends. And Arnold asks him, like, is that it? He's like, that's it, short man. We never, heard from him again. So he gives Arnold the journal, and he's like, of course, this is yours, and feel free to do with it whatever you want. You'd think that's pretty much where the story ends. But what does Arnold find out? A little glimmer of hope here at the end.
This is what was so cool when he's looking at the journal by himself later on, out on the stoop, I believe.
Back on the stoop.
He finds the last 2 pages of the journal. Ooh, I got like tingles just thinking about this.
It's well done. It's well written.
He notices that these final 2 pages are stuck together, and he goes
from
to
all that Kama Sutra action. I ruined it for you. I ruined everything.
His brothers and sisters, his unborn brothers and sisters sticking together the pages.
On the
page. Like just glue sticked together. Right. So to ground myself in this. So Arnold pulls apart those pages. Yeah. Arnold pulls apart these pages and realizes it's a map.
Yeah, a well-drawn color illustrated map.
Yeah, is a fully illustrated map of San Lorenzo and where his parents had been staying. And in his excitement, the episode concludes with him running into the house and yelling for his grandfather to tell him the discovery that he's made.
Yeah, and then like a vision of like a plane, I think, flying away through the clouds or something, or him flying away through the clouds.
Right.
Which is a nice way to end it, except for the fact that they're revisiting this, and we will maybe find out what actually ultimately happened to Arnold's parents. Now, if they just open up where Arnold's like suddenly, 10, 15 years older, and he's like an explorer himself.
With a ball chin.
With a ball chin and a football head and a tiny blue hat. He's going to be like the weirdest adult ever. I don't know what they're going to do, man. I mean, I'm torn. It'd be kind of cool to see him like find out what actually happened to his parents, find that they actually are alive, and then maybe he meets a village girl or he meets another missionary or something, and he carries on with his life and gets missionary with the missionary, or carries on with his life or just continues this trend. That would be really nice because it was kind of left unresolved. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you like it how it is now with like the mystery, or would you like to see it resolved?
I'm torn.
Yeah.
But I kind of like it where it is with the mystery. I want to have the ability to substitute a happy ending in the way that I think everything resolves and they're happy. And so being able to put that in there and leaving it open-ended in that manner allows me to do that. I'm a little bit hesitant if they are to come back to this part of the story and really kind of dig into it. Is it going to do it justice after, 14 years?
Yeah.
This has been off the air 15 years. 15
who
years.
knows by the time they get it actually on TV. Yeah.
Right. So that's 15 years later, the show holds up incredibly well.
Yeah, it really does.
No doubting that. Yeah. It's a joy to watch, but is this continuation of it, is it going to be necessary? Is it going to be something that is going to be fulfilling and satisfying?
And the thing is, I think anytime you try to do something like this, you're never going to please everybody, because there are going to be some people that A, didn't want you to do this to begin with, and then B, the people that were interested don't like how you handle it. So I don't know, if you bring back Arnold as a kid, how much can he conceivably do? If you bring back Arnold as an adult, that's weird, and it's not Hey Arnold. So I don't know what you do with this one. So I guess we'll just wait and see. We'll definitely revisit this if and when the new TV movie does come out. But
yeah,
that's our take on it. Would you like to get to some other reviews out there from listener land?
Yeah.
You want to take Ginger 87?
Have a difference of opinions. Yeah, some people have a difference of opinions, and thankfully we're able to find them online and read their reviews as well
because they're silly and they put their opinions out there. Yeah,
right. You could tell clearly that Dave and I have had a positive experience with the show, but let's hear from Ginger87 from New York City. It's titled Good, ellipsis. ... Hey Arnold was a really good cartoon. I used to watch it when I was little in 1996 when I was 9 years old. The show was pretty funny and the characters were realistic. I also liked the fact that the show had many different characters. My favorite episode was Arnold's Christmas. That episode was cute and sweet. I also liked the episodes Monkey Business, Phoebe Cheats, Arnold Betrays Iggy, Helga on the Couch, and Helga and the Nanny. Those episodes were great and hysterical. The movie was also really good. Overall, this was a good Nickelodeon show, and I wish they still aired new episodes. I give this show 10 out of 10 stars.
So just to recap from Ginger87, good, really good, pretty funny, cute and sweet, great and hysterical, also really good.
Good.
Overall good. 10 out of 10 stars. Get it together.
Ginger, you are
Ginger,
all over
you're
the
over
place.
the map. But guess what, Ginger? They've answered your prayers. There will
get
be
ready
new
for
episodes.
this.
There will be new episodes. We do have another one. I am not going to blame Senk for the poor English on this one. This is just one of those bad like Google translations from Germany. So I will do my best to put this in an awful German accent for you. This one is from Senk from Germany, July of 2001. It is titled What an Entertainment. I am from Berlin and 20 years old. I have seen Hey Arnold several times on Super RTL cartoon channel. I just liked it. Especially the episode with the stoop kid is so funny and intelligent. There is a kid who cannot leave his stoop. My God. This episode rules. Just watch it. I liked it. I can't explain more because it's like getting Indian for some reason. I can't explain more because I don't know how to explain. What's happening to this accent? I can't explain more because I don't know how to explain it. You'll remember that episode if you are a fan of this cartoon. Sank, I apologize for my drifting, terrible German accent, but what an entertainment. Thank you so much for that review. I loved it. Oh, I think we're recovered from Hey Arnold. This was an interesting departure. Not exactly what I expected, but I'm glad we revisited this one. So definitely let us know.
I agree.
If you had other favorite episodes of this cartoon, and if you remember the journal, and if you're looking forward to the new version of Hey Arnold. So definitely let us know.
In the interim, before we get to these new episodes, we should mention and note that this entire series is on Hulu. All 5 seasons.
Watch them
all 100 episodes.
Check them out.
So dig in and enjoy.
It's a lot of fun. And if you just go back and watch, like, just search for your favorites and just watch them, you'll definitely find that there's a couple more, like, probably right around those that you really like and you want to check out too. So I'd say definitely go back and check them out. That's about it for us. So Sean, what do you have coming up in the next couple of weeks that the listeners out there can check out as well?
Man, I'm going to be performing a bunch in the DC area. I've got some shows that are coming up January 14th. Saturday the 23rd, Friday the 29th, and oh my gosh, February the 5th.
Nice.
All of these shows are at a place called the DC Arts Center, or DCAC, in Adams Morgan. You can find out more information about tickets and times. I'll be performing with a group called Knox, as always, because they're the best. And you can find out more information on WIT DC for tickets and times. And this is all leading up for us before Knox and I all head out to San Diego. We'll be performing in the San Diego Improv Festival. It's the 8:30 show on February the 13th. If you're in the SD area, coming out, we'll be having tons of fun. We'll be hanging out. It's Valentine's Day weekend, so bring a date, have a laugh, buy me a drink at the bar later.
Sounds like fun, man.
It'll be a great time. And you can find me on the IG and the TR at Sean Paul Ellis.
God, is it IG now?
Yeah, I call it IG.
Does anyone else?
Yeah, probably not.
They do. It's Instagram and Twitter for old folks like me who don't know what the hell he's talking about. At Sean
but
Paul
Dave,
Ellis.
those are my goings-ons. What are you up to, buddy?
Well, I just want to say that we will have all the information for Sean's upcoming shows over at our website. You can also find links to my goings-ons. You can find me at collider.com. I'll be reviewing and recapping a bunch of shows coming up. So when Flash, Arrow, and The Walking Dead return from their mid-season hiatus, I will be doing episodic recaps of those. So feel free to come over to collider.com and check it out. You can also just check out the general TV movie news that we have going on over there 24/7 pretty much. I've actually got some interesting news that maybe some of you might be interested in. I've been a fiction writer for a long time, probably about 12 years now. So I actually just started up just a fiction site, just a place for me to just kind of dump all the short fiction that I put out there. I've had some issues lately with applying, submitting stories for like short fiction and then just watching as the websites and magazines just fold completely or just take years to get back to you. So I just want to put this stuff out there. You can go to davetrumbore.com, and it's actually where I have I'm starting to put all my fiction writing up. So it's pretty lean right now, but in the future I plan to have, fairly regular updates over there. It's just kind of something for me to just kind of have like a creative dump site that is not related to cartoons all the time. So if you're interested, you can check that out. You can also find me on Twitter at DrClawMD. As for the show, you can find us on our website, SaturdayMorningCartoons.com. Remember, that's morning with a U. You can also follow us on Twitter at MorningTunes. Check out Sean's handiwork on our Tumblr page, SaturdayMorningCartoons.tumblr.com. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube site. You can listen to us each and every week over iTunes and Stitcher, and you can feel free to send us an email with episode suggestions, SaturdayMorningCartoons@gmail.com. Next week, we will be continuing our New Year's Nicktoons roundup with the Angry Beavers. I don't know. I remember watching this one, but I don't know how it's going to hold up. I'll be 100% honest with you. This is a weird one.
I remember watching it and then promptly changing the channel. Or it was the thing that was on while I was waiting for something else to come on, so I just watched it.
This
don't remember being in love with this show.
No, this might be the one where Sean and I, like, as we got older, this was just kind of like, this might be the time to stop watching Nicktoons. I think this might be it. So we'll find out next week when we visit the Angry Beavers and see how it holds up. But until then, Happy New Year's again, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time, guys.